The stars looked different from the observation deck of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters on Luna Base. Admiral Eleanor Wright often came here when she needed to think. Today she needed to think harder than ever before. The message from the crashed alien ship had changed everything. Humanity was not alone, and worse, the galaxy was at war. Eleanor was 53 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many Earth conflicts. She had hoped to retire in 5 years. That plan seemed foolish now. "Admiral, they're waiting for you," said her aide, Lieutenant Ryan Clark. The young man stood straight, his uniform crisp, but Eleanor could see the fear in his eyes. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Tell them I'll be right there." She took one last look at the Earth hanging in the black sky, so small, so fragile, and now in so much danger. The war room was filled with the top military and political leaders of Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and admirals, all gathered around a large table. At the center of the table, a hologram showed the damaged alien ship that had crashed in Arizona 3 days ago. "Admiral Wright, please join us," said the Secretary General of the United Nations. "Our guest is ready to speak again." Eleanor nodded and took her seat. The hologram shifted to show a tall, thin being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Ambassador Krelax of the Galactic Confederacy looked tired, if such a term could apply to an alien. Parts of his body were wrapped in bandages. "Thank you for meeting with me again," said Krelax, his words translated by the device he had brought with him. "I understand this is much to process." "That's putting it mildly," said Fleet Commander Alan Dixon, a stern man with a shaved head and deep voice. "You're asking us to join a war that's been going on for 300 years. Krelax moved his upper arms in what Eleanor had learned was a sign of agreement. "The Zethari Empire has consumed thousands of worlds. They will not stop. Eventually they will find Earth. It is only a matter of time." "And why should we trust you?" asked the President of the United States. "How do we know this isn't some trick?" "You have examined my ship," said Krelax. "You have seen the weapons damage. You have tested my blood and found I am not from your world. What more proof do you need?" The room fell silent. The alien was right. 3 days of tests had proven his story was true. There was a massive war in space, and Earth was about to be caught in the middle of it. "Tell us about these Zethari again," said Eleanor, leaning forward. "What are we facing?" Krelax touched a device on his wrist. A new hologram appeared, showing insect-like creatures with armored bodies and multiple eyes. The Zethari are a hive-minded species. They believe all other life forms are either threats to be destroyed or resources to be used. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. "And your Confederacy has been fighting them for 3 centuries?" asked Alan. "Yes. We are a union of 17 species. We value peace. But the Zethari forced us into this war. We are losing." Eleanor studied the alien. "Images. Your technology seems far beyond ours. How could you be losing?" Krelax's large eyes blinked slowly. "We have technology, yes, but we have fought this war carefully, with rules. The Zethari have no such limits." "Rules of war," said Alan, with a slight smile. "Those tend to benefit the side that's winning. We have principles," said Krelax. "Our council believes all life is sacred." "Even the lives of those trying to kill you?" asked Eleanor. "Yes. It is our way." The Secretary General stood up. "Ambassador, could you give us a moment to discuss in private?" After Krelax left the room, heated debate broke out. Some leaders wanted nothing to do with an alien war. Others saw an opportunity to gain advanced technology. A few were simply afraid and wanted to hide. Eleanor remained quiet until finally the Secretary General asked, "Admiral Wright, you've been silent. What's your view?" She stood up slowly. "The way I see it, we have 3 options. 1, we can ignore this warning and hope the Zethari never find us. 2, we can try to stay neutral when they do find us. Or 3, we can join the Confederacy and gain allies and technology. Which do you recommend?" asked the Russian president. "Option 3 is our only real choice," said Eleanor. "Isolation is just waiting to die." Neutrality will last only until the Zathari decide we're useful or in the way. At least with the Confederacy, we have a fighting chance. Fleet Commander Allen nodded. I agree, and I think we bring something to this fight that the Confederacy has lost. The will to do whatever it takes to win. Are you suggesting we ignore their rules of war? Asked the British Prime Minister. I'm suggesting that humanity's survival comes first, said Allen. These Confederacy aliens have been fighting for 300 years with their rules. Maybe it's time for a new approach. After hours more debate, the vote was nearly unanimous. Earth would join the Galactic Confederacy in their war against the Zathari Empire. When Ambassador Krelax returned, Eleanor delivered the news. We accept your offer of alliance. We will need your technology, especially your faster-than-light drives. In return, we offer our full military support. Relief showed on the alien's strange face. Thank you. The Confederacy welcomes Earth. I will contact my government immediately. One thing, Ambassador, said Eleanor. We will fight with you, but we'll fight our way. We didn't start this war, but we intend to finish it. Krelax seemed confused. I don't understand. You will, said Allen. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Earth's first interstellar fleet was built with Confederacy help. Soldiers and pilots trained day and night to use alien technology. Scientists worked around the clock to understand and improve the weapons they were given. On the day the fleet was to depart, Eleanor stood at the main launch bay of the orbital shipyard. 10 massive warships floated before her, each crewed by the best Earth had to offer. The flagship, UES Vindicator, would carry Alan Dixon and his command team to the front lines. Are we ready for this? Asked Ryan Clark, who had been promoted to captain and given command of a destroyer. No, said Eleanor honestly, but we'll learn fast or die trying. Alan approached them, his new uniform bearing the combined insignia of Earth and the Confederacy. The Zathari have attacked Proxima Centauri. The Confederacy forces there are taking heavy losses. That's where we're headed first. Good hunting, said Eleanor. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Confederacy. We're fighting for Earth. Alan saluted. The Zathari have no idea what's coming for them. As the fleet departed for its first battle, Eleanor watched from the observation deck. She thought about the galaxy out there, full of threats she could barely imagine. But she also thought about humanity's long history of war. For better or worse, fighting was something humans understood all too well. They wanted warriors, she whispered to herself. They're about to get them. The UES Vindicator emerged from faster-than-light travel with a flash of light. 9 other human ships followed close behind. Through the main view screen, Fleet Commander Alan Dixon could see the battle already raging around Proxima Centauri. The Confederacy ships, sleek and elegant, fired precise blue energy beams at the enemy. The Zathari vessels looked like giant metal insects, black and spiky, returning fire with red pulses that tore through Confederacy shields. It was clear who was winning. Status report, Alan ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos visible. Outside, Confederacy forces have lost 30% of their fleet, reported Lieutenant Olivia Benson from her station. Zathari losses minimal. The Confederacy is using standard formation delta, focusing fire on primary targets. Alan nodded. He had studied Confederacy battle tactics during the journey. Always the same patterns, always the same approach. The Zathari had clearly learned to counter them. Open a channel to all Earth ships, he said. When the comm officer nodded, Alan spoke clearly. This is Fleet Commander Dixon. You've all studied the enemy. You know their strengths. Now it's time to show them ours. Execute Battle Plan Thunderstrike, all ships weapons free. The human fleet split apart, breaking the neat formation that the Confederacy had taught them. Instead of focusing fire on the largest enemy ships as expected, the human vessels targeted the smaller Zathari craft, overwhelming their shields with concentrated fire. On the bridge of the Confederacy command ship, Ambassador Krelax watched in confusion. What are they doing? This isn't the plan we agreed on. The Confederacy admiral, a tall being with 6 eyes and golden skin, looked equally puzzled. They're attacking the support ships instead of the main battlecruisers. It's Unorthodox. Meanwhile, on the UES Vindicator, Alan gave his next order. Launch Electronic Warfare Package Alpha. A series of small drones shot out from the human ships. Instead of attacking with conventional weapons, they began broadcasting signals across all frequencies. The Zathari communications network, which had never faced human hacking attempts before, suddenly filled with noise and false commands. "Sir, the enemy ships are slowing their attack," reported Olivia. "Their formation is breaking." "Now," said Alan. "All ships, execute Maneuver Sierra. Target their flagship with everything we've got." The human fleet suddenly accelerated, pushing their engines beyond safety limits. They swarmed the confused Zathari ships from multiple directions. On the Zathari main view screens, warning signals flashed as their communication systems failed under the electronic assault. The UES Vindicator dove straight toward the largest enemy ship. At the last moment, it fired all weapons and veered away, narrowly avoiding a collision. 3 other human ships followed the same path, hammering the Zathari flagship from different angles. "Their shields are failing," called out Weapons Officer Greg Peters. "One more pass should do it." Alan nodded. "Tell the Phoenix to finish them off." The smallest ship in the human fleet, the UES Phoenix, darted forward. Instead of using energy weapons, it fired a volley of physical missiles, an antiquated weapon by Confederacy standards, but one the Zathari shields weren't calibrated to stop. The missiles struck home. The Zathari flagship erupted in a series of explosions before breaking apart. "Enemy flagship destroyed," reported Greg, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. The remaining Zathari ships began to retreat, their coordinated attack now in shambles. Without their flagship to direct them, they fell into disarray. "Should we pursue?" asked Olivia. Alan shook his head. "No, let them run. They'll spread the word about what happened here today." He turned to Communications Officer Jack Wilson. "Open a channel to the Confederacy command ship." Ambassador Krelax appeared on screen, his forearms moving in agitation. "Commander Dixon, that was unexpected. You deviated from the battle plan." "We improved it," said Alan simply. "The enemy was ready for your tactics. They weren't ready for ours." "You used deception," said Krelax, his translator struggling to keep the shock from his voice. "And those projectile weapons, they're so primitive?" Alan offered with a slight smile. "Sometimes the old ways work best. The enemy wasn't prepared for them." The golden-skinned admiral moved into view. "Your tactics were effective, Commander, but risky. You could have lost ships with such aggressive maneuvers." "War is always risky," replied Alan, "but calculated risks win battles. Today they saved this planet." The admiral could not argue with that. The battle in space is won, but the Zathari still hold the main colony on the planet. Their ground forces are dug in around the capital city. "Then it's time for Phase 2, said Alan. "Prepare to receive our dropships. Lieutenant Samantha Foster will lead the ground assault." In the troop bay of the UES Vindicator, Lieutenant Samantha Foster briefed her soldiers. 200 men and women in powered combat armor stood ready, each checking their weapons one final time. "The Zathari on the ground have never faced humans before," Samantha told them. "The Confederacy says their armor is resistant to energy weapons, so we're going with kinetic rounds. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't stop moving." A soldier raised her hand. "Lieutenant, the Confederacy briefing said the atmosphere on Proxima 4 has higher nitrogen levels than Earth. Will our equipment work properly?" Samantha nodded. "Chief Engineer Paul Miller has recalibrated our suits. We've got about 4 hours before the filters start to degrade. That's why we're not waiting. We hit the ground running and finish this mission fast." The dropships launched, streaking through the planet's atmosphere like falling stars. As they approached the landing zone, Zathari anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky around them. Samantha gripped her harness tighter as her ship dodged and weaved. "Remember your training," she called out. "The Zathari fight as a collective. Take out their command nodes, and the rest will fall apart." The dropships touched down hard in the outskirts of the colony capital. As soon as the doors opened, Human soldiers poured out, moving faster and more unpredictably than the Zathari defenders had anticipated. Samantha led her squad toward the main defense grid. Confederacy intelligence had identified it as the key to the Zathari control over the colony. Unlike the methodical formation-based approaches the Zathari were used to, the humans split into small teams, using the terrain for cover and striking from unexpected directions. "They're not adapting," Samantha observed as her team took down another group of Zathari soldiers. "They keep using the same tactics even when they don't work." "Makes our job easier," said Corporal Jason Hill as he reloaded his rifle. "They expected us to fight like the Confederacy." 3 hours later, Samantha's team reached the central command node. With a combination of explosives and electronic warfare devices, they shut down the entire Zathari defense network. As the sun set, on Proxima Centauri 4, the remaining Zathari forces surrendered. The colony was free for the first time in months. In orbit, Alan Dixon received Samantha's report with satisfaction. "Well done, Lieutenant. Casualties?" "Minimal, sir," came Samantha's voice over the comm. "They expected us to play by their rules." Alan looked over at Ambassador Krelax, who had been watching the battle with growing amazement. "That's the thing about humans, Ambassador. We adapt, we improvise, and we don't fight fair when our survival is at stake." Krelax's translator was silent for a moment before he replied. "The Confederacy has been fighting this war for 3 centuries without making such progress. Today, your people liberated a world in less than a day." "This is just the beginning," said Alan. "Now the real war starts." News of the human victory at Proxima Centauri 4 spread quickly through the galaxy. In the grand meeting hall of the Confederacy Council, representatives from 17 alien species watched video recordings of the battle with mixed feelings of hope and unease. "These humans fight like nothing we have ever seen," said Counselor Vrex, a reptilian being with iridescent scales. "They do not follow conventional battle doctrine." "They are effective," replied Counselor Tella, whose crystalline body sparkled under the chamber lights. "For the first time in decades, we have pushed the Zathari back." Ambassador Krelax stood before the council, still recovering from his injuries. "I did not expect such intensity from them. They achieved in hours what our forces could not in months." The head counselor, an ancient being named Zorval, leaned forward. "Are these humans a danger to us as well? Should we be concerned about their methods?" Krelax considered the question carefully. "They are dangerous, yes, but right now that danger is aimed at our enemy. They fight to protect their home world. I believe we can work with them." Meanwhile, on a space station orbiting Earth, Dr. Nathan Palmer studied a captured Zathari communication device. At 42, Nathan had already been one of Earth's top scientists before first contact. Now he led the Xenotechnology Integration Division, tasked with understanding and improving upon alien technology. "Hand me that scanner," he said to his assistant, Dr. Betty Chen. "I think I found something interesting in their quantum entanglement system." Betty passed him the device. "What did you find?" Nathan's eyes lit up with excitement. "The Zathari use quantum entangled particles to communicate instantly across vast distances. It's how their hive mind stays connected. But look here." He pointed to a pattern on his screen. "There's a pattern to the frequency shifts. I think we can use it to listen in on their communications." "That would be huge," said Betty, leaning closer to see. "We could know their plans before they execute them." "Not just listen," said Nathan with a smile. "We might be able to send false information too. Imagine the chaos we could create in their command structure." For the next month, Nathan and his team worked tirelessly. When they finally succeeded, they called their breakthrough the Prometheus Protocol, named after the Titan who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity. Admiral Eleanor Wright received their report with great interest. "You're telling me we can tap into their entire communication network?" "Yes, Admiral," said Nathan. "We can listen to everything they say, and with some refinement, we'll be able to send false orders that their ships will believe come from their high command." Eleanor's face showed rare approval. "This could change everything. How soon can it be deployed?" "We're ready for a field test now," said Nathan. "We just need a target." That target came in the form of Captain Lisa Reeves and her stealth vessel, the UES Shadow Dancer. The ship was smaller than most in the fleet, built for speed and stealth, rather than direct combat. Its hull was covered in a special material that absorbed rather than reflected sensor scans. Lisa was 35, with short blonde hair and intense green eyes. She had spent her career in Earth's Special Forces before being selected to command the Shadow Dancer. "Your mission is both simple and extremely dangerous," Admiral Wright told her during the briefing. "You will take the Shadow Dancer deep into Zethari territory and test the Prometheus protocol on their supply lines." Lisa studied the star charts showing her target. "These supply depots feed their main fleet in Sector 7. If we disrupt them, their entire offensive in that sector will grind to a halt," finished Eleanor. "Exactly. But the Confederacy has tried conventional attacks on these bases for years without success. The Zethari defenses are too strong for a direct assault, which is why we won't attack directly," said Lisa with a confident smile. "We'll make them attack themselves." 2 weeks later, the Shadow Dancer slipped silently through Zethari space, its advanced stealth systems keeping it hidden from enemy sensors. Lisa and her crew of 30 specialists approached the largest supply depot in the sector, a massive space station surrounded by defensive platforms, all systems dark. Lisa ordered as they came within range. "Deploy the quantum receiver." A small probe detached from the Shadow Dancer, drifting toward the Zethari station. Once in position, it began receiving the quantum signals that flowed between Zethari ships and bases. "It's working," reported Communications Officer Frank Cooper. "We're tapped into their network. Their ships are receiving orders to report to different sectors for inspection." "Perfect," said Lisa. "Now for Phase 2. Send the prepared false alert." Frank typed rapidly on his console. Through the Prometheus protocol, they sent a message that appeared to come from Zethari High Command. An urgent warning about human infiltrators disguised as Zethari aboard certain supply ships. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zethari security forces began boarding their own vessels, searching for infiltrators that didn't exist. In the confusion, several ships fired on each other, each believing the other had been compromised. "It's working better than we expected," said Lisa, watching the chaos unfold on her view screen. "Now for the final touch." The Shadow Dancer sent one last false message, an order for the depot to transfer its supplies to a fictional emergency location. As Zethari transport ships began loading valuable resources, Lisa gave another command: release the marker drones. Small, nearly invisible drones attached themselves to the departing Zethari transports. These would allow human and Confederacy forces to track the ships to their new locations, revealing even more of the Zethari supply network. The Shadow Dancer slipped away as silently as it had arrived, leaving behind a disrupted enemy base and confusion that would take weeks to resolve. When Lisa reported back to Admiral Wright, the success exceeded all expectations. "We didn't fire a single shot," she explained, "but we've disrupted their supply lines across 3 sectors and mapped most of their logistics network." Eleanor nodded with satisfaction. "This is exactly the kind of warfare we need to pursue. The Zethari expect direct confrontation. They don't know how to counter this type of attack." Not everyone was as pleased. When briefed about the operation, several Confederacy commanders expressed concern. "This method of warfare seems dishonorable," said a Confederacy general during a joint meeting. "To trick an enemy rather than face them directly." Fleet Commander Alan Dixon, who had returned from another successful battle, responded firmly, "With respect, General, honor doesn't win wars. Results do. The Zethari have been winning for 300 years. If we're going to beat them, we need to change the rules of engagement." Ambassador William Russell, who represented Earth in diplomatics matters, supported this view when addressing the Galactic Council. "You've fought this war for centuries with restraint, and look where it's gotten you. We don't have centuries. We don't have the luxury of half measures." As human forces continued to make unexpected gains against the Zethari, the Council began to see the wisdom in the human approach. even if it made them uncomfortable. For the first time in living memory, the endless advance of the Zathari Empire had been stopped. The war was changing, and humanity was leading that change. For better or worse, the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after humanity joined the war, Admiral Eleanor Wright stood before a wall of screens in the command center on Luna Base. Each screen showed a different battle or operation across the galaxy. Many displayed green symbols indicating victories. A few showed yellow for ongoing conflicts, but the screen for the Proxima Centauri system flashed red. "It happened 3 hours ago," said Communications Officer Maria Diaz. "The Zathari hit Proxima 4 with singularity weapons. The entire planet is gone." Eleanor's face remained stone-like, but her hands gripped the edge of the console tightly. "Casualties. We managed to evacuate most civilians after our early warning. System detected their fleet," said Maria. "But we lost the UES Defender, Valiant, and Intrepid. Current estimate is 32,000 personnel." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. 32,000 lives. The worst loss humans had suffered since joining the war. "The Confederacy Council is requesting an emergency meeting," added Maria. "They're disturbed by the use of singularity weapons. Apparently even the Zathari had avoided them until now." "They're getting desperate," said Eleanor. "Our tactics are working, so they're escalating." She straightened her uniform. "Tell Fleet Commander Dixon and Captain Reeves to join me for the council meeting. It's time we escalate too." 2 hours later, Eleanor, Alan, and Lisa stood before the Galactic Council via hologram. The council members looked shocked and afraid. "This attack changes everything," said Head Counselor Zorval. "Singularity weapons were forbidden by all civilized species. They don't just destroy, they erase matter from existence. The Zathari have crossed a line even they respected for centuries." "With respect, Counselor," said Eleanor, "they crossed that line because we pushed them to it. Our tactics are working. They're losing for the first time in this war, and they're scared." "Perhaps we should consider peace negotiations," suggested another council member. Alan Dixon stepped forward. "The Zathari don't want peace. They want to destroy anyone who isn't them. This attack wasn't desperation, it was a message. They're telling us what happens if we keep fighting." "And what do you propose, Commander?" asked Zorval. "We send our own message," said Eleanor, her voice cold and clear. "You've been fighting this war with rules and restraint. It's time to remove those limitations." The council chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Ambassador William Russell raised his hands for quiet. "Admiral Wright isn't suggesting we use singularity weapons, but the Zathari need to understand that attacking us only makes us fight harder." After much debate, the council reluctantly agreed to give human forces more operational freedom. They had little choice. Humanity's ships and strategies had become the backbone of the war effort. When the meeting ended, Eleanor opened a direct channel to all human forces throughout the galaxy. Her face appeared on screens in ships, bases, and outposts. "Today we lost 32,000 of our brothers and sisters at Proxima Centauri," she began. "The Zathari believed this would break our resolve. They were wrong." She paused, her eyes intense. "From this moment forward, we fight without restraint. Operation Reckoning begins now. To our enemies, you have shown us your power. What you've actually done is remove any hesitation we might have had." Within hours, human forces across the galaxy began a coordinated offensive, unlike anything the war had seen before. While the Confederacy had always focused on military targets, Operation Reckoning targeted the cultural and social foundations of the Zathari Empire. Using the Prometheus Protocol, Dr. Nathan Palmer and his team severed the psychic connections that linked Zathari leadership castes. Without these connections, their hive mind began to fragment. "They rely on perfect communication," Nathan explained to the Joint Human Confederacy Command. "By disrupting their network, we're not just stopping their orders, we're breaking their society. It would be like humans suddenly being unable to understand each other's language." On the front lines, Fleet Commander Alan Dixon led a massive assault on the Zathari homeworld's defensive perimeter. Unlike previous direct attacks, this one was a diversion. While the Zathari focused on the threat to their home system, Captain Lisa Reeves led a fleet of stealth ships on a different mission. Shadow Dancer to all units, Lisa said as her ships approached their targets. Begin deployment of the culture bombs. These were not explosive devices, but specially designed transmitters. Once in place around Zethari colony worlds, they began broadcasting human cultural information, music, art, stories, and ideas of individual freedom. To a species that thought as a collective, these concepts were deeply disturbing. We're not just fighting their ships, Lisa told her crew. We're fighting their way of thinking. Meanwhile, a young engineer named Daniel Rivera worked with Confederacy scientists to exploit a fundamental flaw in Zethari technology. The Zethari had built their defenses to counter energy weapons and advanced explosives, but Daniel had noticed something important. They rely too much on complex systems, he explained to the astonished alien scientists. Their shields are calibrated for specific threats. But look what happens when we use something simple. He demonstrated by firing a small projectile at a captured Zethari device. The simple metal object passed straight through the energy shield and damaged the sensitive components inside. Sometimes the old ways work best, Daniel said with a smile. A carefully placed wrench can do what a laser cannon can't. Within weeks, Confederacy ships were equipped with human-designed kinetic weapons, simple but effective against the Zethari's sophisticated defenses. 3 months into Operation Reckoning, the effects were clear. Zethari forces were in disarray, their command structure fractured by the Prometheus Protocol. Their colonies were experiencing something they had never faced before: disagreement and dissent, spread by human cultural transmissions. For the first time in the 300-year war, the Zethari were not just being defeated, they were being fundamentally changed. In her office on Luna Base, Admiral Eleanor Wright received the latest reports with grim satisfaction. The losses at Proxima Centauri still weighed heavily on her, but the response had been effective beyond all expectations. The Zethari High Command has gone silent, reported Maria Diaz. Our intelligence suggests they're fighting among themselves now. Some factions want to continue the war. Others are considering retreat. Eleanor nodded. And the Confederacy? How are they handling our methods? Mixed reactions, said Maria. Some are uncomfortable with how quickly we've changed the war. Others are just grateful it's working. Eleanor looked out her window at Earth, blue and peaceful in the distance. We didn't start this war, but we will finish it no matter what it takes. 3 years after humanity joined the Galactic War, the massive Zethari fleet gathered at Kelthoran Prime for one final stand. Their once mighty empire had collapsed to a fraction of its former size. Their hive-mind leadership was fragmented. Their supply lines were in ruins, but they still commanded thousands of warships, and they were determined to make their last battle legendary. Fleet Commander Alan Dixon, now promoted to Admiral, studied the tactical display aboard the UES Vindicator. His fleet was outnumbered, 5-1. By conventional military logic, the battle was unwinnable. Status report, he said calmly. All ships in position, reported Lieutenant Commander Olivia Benson, who had earned her promotion through 3 years of hard fighting. The Shadow Dancer fleet is in stealth mode behind the third moon. Dr. Palmer's team has the Prometheus Protocol. At full capacity, Alan nodded. And the Confederacy forces? In position, but nervous, said Olivia with a small smile. They still don't fully understand our plan. They don't need to understand it, said Alan. They just need to follow their part. He touched his comm unit. This is Admiral Dixon to all human ships. The enemy expects us to retreat in the face of their superior numbers. They expect us to fight conventionally. Let's disappoint them one last time. The battle began with the human fleet doing the unexpected, charging directly at the center of the Zethari formation. The Confederacy ships, as planned, held back and watched in horror as their allies seemed to commit suicide. On the Zethari command ship, the Supreme Hive Leader clicked its mandibles in satisfaction. The humans have finally made a mistake. Their aggression has led them into our trap. But as the human ships reached the Zethari center, they suddenly scattered in all directions, like a firework exploding. Each ship targeted a different enemy vessel, ignoring the larger command ships to attack smaller, seemingly insignificant craft. What are they doing? Wondered the Zethari leader. Those are just support vessels. The answer came when the targeted ships suddenly turned and began firing on their own fleet. The Prometheus protocol had reached its ultimate form, not just intercepting communications, but directly controlling Zethari systems. As confusion spread through the enemy fleet, the Shadow Dancer and her sister ships emerged from hiding. Instead of attacking with conventional weapons, they launched special drones that attached to Zethari vessels. Once in place, the drones began broadcasting directly into the Zethari neural network. On the Vindicator's bridge, Dr. Nathan Palmer watched his screens with intense focus. "It's working," he said. "The neural disruptors are breaking down their hive connection. Their ships are starting to operate independently." For a species that had always functioned as a collective, this was devastating. Individual Zethari, suddenly cut off from the hive mind, had no experience making their own decisions. Some ships stopped moving entirely. Others fired randomly or tried to flee. "Now," ordered Allen. "All ships, execute final attack pattern. Confederacy forces, move in as planned." The human fleet regrouped with astonishing speed and precision. Together with the Confederacy ships, they formed a sphere around the disorganized Zethari fleet. Then they attacked from all sides at once, focusing fire on the larger command ships that had been ignored in the initial assault. The battle lasted only 4 hours. When it ended, the once mighty Zethari armada was reduced to scattered survivors. The Supreme Hive Leader's ship, trapped and disabled, sent out a surrender signal. "We've won," said Olivia, her voice filled with wonder. "The war is over." Allen shook his head. "The battle is over. Now comes the hard part, making peace." 1 month later, representatives from Earth, the Confederacy, and the remaining Zethari leadership gathered on neutral territory in the Rigel system. The peace negotiations were held in a massive transparent dome with a view of Rigel's blue-white star. Major Catherine Wilson represented humanity in the diplomatic talks. At 34, she had begun the war as a lieutenant, but had quickly shown a talent for understanding alien perspectives, a rare skill that made her perfect for her current role. The Zethari delegation entered the chamber with heads bowed, their once proud mandibles clicking nervously. They had come expecting demands for their complete surrender, perhaps even the destruction of their remaining worlds. "We are prepared to accept your terms," said the lead Zethari, its voice translated through a device. "We know what we deserve after centuries of war." Catherine looked at the alien thoughtfully. "What you deserve and what will happen are different things. Humanity didn't come to the stars to conquer. We came to ensure our survival." She activated a holographic display showing a proposed peace treaty. "These are our terms. Your empire will be reduced to your home system and 3 colony worlds. You will destroy all singularity weapons. You will allow Confederacy observers on your planets to ensure compliance." The Zethari leader's compound eyes widened in surprise. "You're allowing us to survive? To keep our homeworld?" "Yes," said Catherine. "With conditions. Your society is changing already. The hive mind is breaking down. Your people are learning to think as individuals. We believe this is a natural evolution that should be allowed to continue." The negotiations continued for days, with representatives from all sides working through the complex details of ending a war that had lasted for centuries. The Confederacy members were surprised by the relatively merciful terms humanity proposed. "After what they did at Proxima Centauri, many expected you to demand their extinction," said Ambassador Krelax to Catherine during a break. She shook her head. "That's not who we are. Yes, we fight with everything we have when threatened. But true strength is knowing when to show mercy." 6 months later, Admiral Eleanor Wright stood at the observation deck of the new Galactic Defense Headquarters on Luna. Earth had been given a permanent seat on the reformed Galactic Council, acknowledging humanity's crucial role in ending the war. Eleanor watched Earth rise over the lunar horizon, feeling both pride and weariness. The war had cost humanity dearly, over 100,000 lives lost. But Earth had not only survived its first contact with galactic civilization, it had fundamentally changed it. "Admiral," said Captain Ryan Clark, entering the room, "the new Confederacy ships are ready for inspection. They've incorporated our kinetic weapon designs and electronic warfare systems. Eleanor nodded. And how are the Zethari representatives settling in? Better than expected, said Ryan. It's strange seeing them act as individuals instead of a hive. They're actually quite intelligent when they think for themselves. Eleanor turned from the window. The rebuilding efforts across thousands of devastated worlds would take decades. The political landscape of the galaxy had been forever altered. And humanity, once an unknown species on a small blue planet, was now a central power in galactic affairs. We came into this universe thinking we were small, Eleanor said quietly. The universe quickly learned otherwise. As she walked toward the meeting room where representatives from 23 species awaited her, Eleanor reflected on the strange path that had led humanity to this point. They had entered the galactic stage as warriors, bringing a brutal war to its end. Now they would help build a lasting peace. The galaxy had trembled when humanity joined the war. Now it would learn what humans could accomplish in times of peace. And that, perhaps, was even more remarkable.